Welcome, everybody. Sunday Think Tank episode. These are pretty open, pretty free form. We take your super chat questions. We just kind of talk. Sometimes we do these behind a paywall. And we do, of course, have a Sunday episode, When China Rules the World, with Martin Jakes, which is a really good deep dive on understanding as best we can a little bit how China works. And of course, we always have our Sunday episodes, including sometimes think tanks, but this one is available for everybody. So go to patreon.com/TMBS. Hit us with a super chat if you want to take your question or comment. We don't guarantee, though, that even all of those we will get to, just to be transparent.
Caveat emptor.
Yeah, caveat emptor. Very happy, as always, to have joining us for this think tank our comrade and constant collaborator, which I love, Big Woz, the Haitian sensation, Wosny Lambre.
What's up, man? Mike, Matt, Dave, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys. I know we're going to have an amazing time. And, you know, it's always good to be in fellowship with y'all because, like I said, when I was on TMBS the other day, it's like this shit just comes at you in waves of just sadness and just like, oh, shit, that's pretty cool. My man Joel Anderson posted something, I think Lindor, Texas or something. And that's like everybody from that region knows this place is damn near Klan country.
Yeah. And
they held a rally over there for Black Lives Matter with essentially all white people of like 200 people. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy, man. So it's like all of these things are just happening to us at once. It's like grief. It's like hope. It's adulation. It's anger. You know, when you see another cop with his billy club out. But it's so like the sensory overload is, and just the emotions of it all is, it's a lot, man. But it's always good to be talking to you guys. Seriously.
Always. How are you feeling today? I mean, start with you, Woz, but everybody.
man, like I don't mind telling the people, behind the curtains of my own life, right? Like my girlfriend, I guess one of her family members or a family member by marriage posted something that she felt was insensitive.
Mm-hmm.
And she like went after this dude on Facebook, and
a lot of those things happening.
You know what I'm saying? Like she went after this guy and on his Facebook page, and then people reached out and was like, look, it's public, he could get fired for blah 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 blah. And she's like, well, why'd he post it? And blah blah blah, and so there's all of these things are just constantly happening, and I'm the one trying to tell my girl to, calm down, it's okay, like we're not gonna turn every single stone, just like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's just those type of things are just always happening today. It's like, yo, I'm watching who's posting what on social and who's not. I'm not gonna lie, I'm personally not, it's like I just don't. I try not to be that hyper focused on social media just because I just think for mental health reasons, it just becomes too much. Mm-hmm. So this idea that I'm gonna, make moral appraisals of people based on how they're using their social media feed, that's just not a job I feel like taking on right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't
but
take
other
that
people
on
are
in
doing
general. Yeah.
but other people are doing it.
I mean, there's a big difference. See, like, I think there's a really big difference between like that whole like, why are you silent thing? I find very questionable, especially because some folks are actually who are out in different ways are very intentionally silent. But that's different than somebody like if somebody runs their mouth on a Facebook post, then
right.
That's different, like the obligation to post, no, I don't think I don't buy that. But
right.
If you do, the energy will be returned. How are you guys doing, Matt and David?
I was saying before we got on that I was surprised to see, speaking of strange places for Black Lives Matter protests, Rugby, North Dakota. 3,000 people. People might have heard of it before only because it's the geographic center of North America. So as far from an ocean as you can possibly get. And they had a protest.
Waz thinks North Dakota is hilarious.
Just the concept of North Dakota, like the Yankee in me comes out every time that part of the country comes up, like Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota. Like I tell this joke to friends all the time. I'm like, does it actually exist as a place? I don't know that it's actually a place, right? Except for the fact that my man Matt Leck exists, and I trust him that he's not in on some long con. But like, what's out there? You know what I'm saying? Like,
he's not an op.
But no, Mike, you're right. I am just amused by the general idea of the Dakotas, the movie Fargo. Like, I'm just amused by all of these things.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's big. 3,000 people.
And I've had a cousin ask for an explanation about defunding the police. And I talked to my brother about how he's having a tough time because he's arguing with friends about the whole Drew Brees thing. And like, it's hitting the Dakotas this moment. Like, it's not,
hitting the Dakotas.
Often things are insulated. Like, even the recession is like an oil boom.
Yeah, that's true.
I almost feel like Drew Brees is not literally, but he's like in the same way cops go into movements and figure out ways of sabotaging them. I feel like the function of Drew Brees' comments were actually to undermine the NFL and make it like people need to get on the ball. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, at least in like parts of the sports world, that's how it seemed to actually play out.
Well, it's funny between like, I will just say like just generally Drew Brees and like football is one thing, right? I think that he's a good QB and all that, but like the guy is a real moron. Even not only his like recent comments, but you should hear him talk about the Bible. I remember because he is always getting in trouble for like, having pretty socially conservative views. I remember watching him like he got in trouble for like, supporting a focus on the family. And he's like, well, I just supported it because they were doing a movement for bring your Bible to school. And imagine what would happen if every child in America brought their Bible to school. It's like, are you an idiot? Like, what the hell do you think is going to happen from
Well,
that?
like, if you put it in, like, the kids had breast pockets that it would protect
Like, I
them
think
from
that he's
bullets
actually,
at a
like,
shooting or something.
stupid.
Like, what do they think? Sorry.
Yeah.
It's a very,
But
very,
it's been,
very
but it's been
unhappy
funny,
joke.
like, between Drew Brees and, like, Jake Fromm, too.
Oh yeah.
Jake Fromm, like, had these messages saying that only elite white people should have guns, right? And,
Okay.
All right.
And I just have to say, like, culturally, a lot of people, they put these Drew Brees and like Jake Fromm up as like, oh, look at this kind of like white Southerner character. Both of these guys came from super rich, semi-suburban neighborhoods. Drew Brees is from Westlake, which is a super rich part of Austin. Jake Fromm is from a really rich neighborhood in Georgia. So like those people are really showing their true colors in a way that, like, I just want to say, like, how I've been seeing the past week has been really inspiring. Just seeing, there's been people who I know have been like aware of what's going on and somewhat political, from my communities there. But I've been amazed by all the people who I never would have expected to really stand up and taking like really strong stands on this issue. That's been like inspiring, and I think it's like almost like 2-to-1 like positive for every negative post that I see from somebody I knew from high school or something like that.
Man, the thing about Drew Brees that folks need to understand is he's been running this game for a minute, right? Like, I'm white, I smile, I love God, Jesus specifically. Yeah. I love Jesus, I love the troops. Give me money to pitch stuff. Like, this is me. Like, I'm Jesus loving, smiling white boy who loves the cops and the troops. Like that. And when he came into prominence, because he's been around for almost 20 years now, even going back to his days at Purdue, like that was the playbook. Mm-hmm. That literally was the playbook to success commercially. And I even think to a certain extent, you see that with somebody like Russell Wilson, who's not white, but his whole shtick of, I love God, I don't say anything controversial. It's financially driven to the point where he's going on like these God shows, these Jesus shows with ministers and stuff, and saying that he didn't pork his girlfriend Ciara until they got married, which is just like.
Did you just say pork?
Yeah. Sorry, somebody's gotta grow it up. That's a first,
actually, on this show.
Like, somebody's gotta grow it up over here. We just can't be an egg-headed bunch. We gotta try to attract a broader coalition here.
Yo, is there a third way between egghead and pork?
We need to triangulate that. But anyway, when you see Russell Wilson lying clearly about being intimate with his significant other.
Okay, all right, yeah, you didn't triangulate. You went to the other extreme. Let's go back to pork. Go back to all right, so he said he didn't pork her like anybody.
Right, so he said he didn't boink her until 3 years into their relationship. Like, he's following a Drew Brees type playbook, right? Like, just be as uncontroversial. Like something like Jesus, the freaking favorability or the Q rating of Jesus amongst the American public is like undeniable because it cuts across Latin people, Black people, white people. Like, they know where the bread gets buttered, right? So Drew Brees is so used to robotically saying these tropes. Mm-hmm. And he's a man outside of time. He's not a man in the moment right now. And I think that's and they cut his head off. Oh my God. To the point where Roger Goodell even threw him under the bus. He did his from his study with his leather-bound books and, probably $5,000.
Looking like exactly like the
Waspiest
ever. If they made a Dodgeball Part 2, which would never be as good as Dodgeball 1, which is one of the best movies ever made, Goodell looked like the Verge, like the villain in the sequel to that. Just like, you were able to like mess up Ben Stiller's plan, but he's a joke. Like, look at my study. I've got a leather-bound copy of Moby Dick I've never read. Now I'm about to go pretend I respect Colin Kaepernick. But that's kind of what I mean, is that he was so he did exactly his shtick, and it was so out, as you said, out of the moment that I think that it led to Goodell. Like it hurt. It was not a helpful statement from even what he was trying to do, which is, tamp it down, pretend there isn't a problem, and all of it. Mm-hmm. It was so, and not even it wasn't tone. I mean, tone deaf implies there's a relationship to the register. It just as you said, it was just gone.
Yeah, in a value neutral way, it was dumb. Like it just had not heard any kind of argument.
Yes, it was dumb. That's the only word. Do we take? Is there any super chat so far? We could take one.
We got a comment. We got one. George Floyd. Thanks for that, John Howell. Mac Glassbin says, "My city, Minneapolis, just disbanded the police in a veto-proof majority. Mayor Fry could suck it. The people are winning, and we must keep fighting." Molly Downs, left is best, right is blight. I've never heard that before. No questions. I don't know if the Discord questions aren't open, or I don't know how those get opened, or there's none in there.
No, we could just we'll do these for now. Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think de Blasio stopped the curfew tonight and came out and gave a kind of general statement about said on Twitter we need to start looking about reallocating NYPD resources into education and other areas. I think it's going to be really interesting and really important to see how the next wave of this is messaged and talked about. And as I said, we keep in touch with polls and what most people actually think, not to meet people exactly to meet people where they are in the hopes of leveraging actual changes, right? Versus, just trying to skip over it. But I saw a Wall Street Journal poll today that, 80% of the country thinks the country's on the wrong track. That's always that's a very intense, Donald Trump, that's a Donald Trump's in serious trouble number. And more importantly, polarity. And again, this, I'm sure anybody watching this would find this obvious, but again, thinking of the large masses of the country and how polls usually show up, more people are disturbed by the police actions than not. And most people think the protests are justified. And so that's significant.
Man, that's crazy. that says a lot to me. When people say the protests are justified, because I think people will pay lip service to the police being like, "Oh, that was wrong. Clearly, they did a bad job."
Yeah.
And then
that was that cold-blooded murder that was recorded on camera.
Right, that was clearly they aired there somehow. But if people are reacting to outrage on the streets and saying no, these homies have a right to feel this way, they have a right to assemble in this manner, they have a right to sort of exercise their free speech in this manner. To me, that's saying a lot. Mm. And like you said, the stuff for the president, I don't think anybody, even Donald Trump's biggest fans, think of him as some sort of stabling force. In fact, I think they see him as a chaos agent. I don't think anybody sees him as a stabling force. And then when things get this turbulent and this unstable, it's maybe. See now Joe Biden looking probably much better right now, which is, says a lot.
Absolutely. What do you guys think about, just that idea though of how do the demands get built? What are the demands? The two main things that we see are one set of things DeRay is putting forward, which is just the latest iteration of bullshit, just they should do a visualization exercise before they go and brutalize a black neighborhood or whatever. that, and then there's like these things that I want to not embrace, like, don't put the cart before the horse, right? Like I still think if you go and you talk to most people and you say abolish the police, they're going to be like, wait, what does that mean?
No.
What are we talking about?
That's not an effective
blah.
message. Not right now.
Yeah, it's not an effective message, but I think that defund, and I think it's a real mixed bag, because I think it is catching on, and all of a sudden it's opening people's minds in ways that absolutely have surprised me in the last week, that are positive and have potential major implications for taking on militarized, racist, broken windows, and class-based policing, like all of the themes that we have talked about. But I also know that, I think it at least to me, like it would need to be really clearly correlated with, like, basically, like, as you and I talked about the idea that, like, the police department already should be 5 or 6 different things, going down to, like, basically, like, yeah, there are some people that might actually handle real actual crimes that nobody wants to be around, like murder. Why is this even the same organization that handles mental health issues, shoplifting, noise complaints? Like, that in and of itself is a crazy concept, that all of those functions are put together, and there's no equivalent. It's not like the fire department are also like the lifeguards and building, like inspectors or whatever. I mean, I guess.
But Mike, we've already seen this happen before in New York.
Yeah.
For instance, the people who write you tickets for parking illegally somewhere, or that used to be guys with guns on their hip doing that job.
Fucking
and then
insane.
The city decided to invest in an auxiliary group who doesn't carry guns, who ostensibly they drive in a blue and white car, but they've decided that, all right, your job is to do this specific work right here. And so, of course, there's ways to divvy up the jobs and not have it all be under the same umbrella, where, like we mentioned, somebody investigating an actual violent crime is not under the same auspices as, the freaking people who tell you who are enforcing open container laws.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that seems obvious to me.
A key word that I've found in this is just assure people that we'll still have detectives, like, to look after murderers.
Yeah, right,
like,
right,
things
right,
like
right.
that.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
okay,
seriously, that's important. And also, in addition to that, like, it's a cynical talking point that, like, people like David Frum are exploiting. But I want to go on the offense with private security. It's like, yeah, you're right, and we should be banning these types of operations, period. Like, that's another thing that should be aggressively legislated against nationally and internationally.
Wait, can you catch me up to speed of David Frum?
He just was like, abolish the police. That's great news for America's private security firms. And by the way, like, that's true. That's like, as is now, in this environment, I have no doubt there are certain places that will go and make that move. And there will be certain neighborhoods and certain areas that will lean heavily into that industry. So that regulating and attacking that industry and getting rid of that industry absolutely needs to be part of the mix. David, what are you trying to say?
I mean, I just want to say generally what's happening in Minneapolis right now is incredible. I mean, just how much that discourse and conversation has shifted in a week. That the city council is now going to dismantle their police department. I mean, really think about it. Like,
what does that actually mean? So I want to know. Yeah, what does that actually mean?
I mean, so this is all sort of like unfolding right now. This was announced basically right before we came on, but the majority, a large majority of the city council in Minneapolis has now said that they are going to dismantle the police department, and basically they would set up a new kind of organization. And I think there's a lot of different ideas as to where that goes, but I think the fundamental lesson, and we'll learn more about as it goes on, is that they're going to be willing to try a lot more radical and different solutions. And I think fundamentally, the main argument is what we've been saying, which is that we shouldn't have people with guns going to dealing with the kind of things that the police do for the most part,
and shouldn't be in any schools ever.
Yeah, and they already they got rid of them in the schools there. The University of Minnesota, I believe, also got rid of of police officers on their campus. So there's a really massive political shift that's happening in Minneapolis right now, and I think one thing that we've just continued to have learned, I think, over the past 5 years especially, is that things can move dramatically very quickly in this country. The conversations that we're having today are very different than what we were having 5 years ago. So I think like it's important to not miss the moment, right? Like this is a time where we can actually be quite radical. And I think the defund the police argument has really been good at that for making the arguments very clear to people. It's fundamentally like, the idea that we're just going to do kind of like bureaucratic reforms on the police department, those don't work. And I think that people can understand that. I don't like, there's a lot of political education that's happening in the streets right now. And that seems to hold a lot better than, think pieces in different publications or anything like that, right? Because this is actually talking directly to the people. And I think
that's a shock.
Specifically, one thing that really frightened me, I lived in DC for a long time before I came up to New York. And, obviously the protests there have been, very intense. And you saw Mayor Bowser, they painted Black Lives Matter all over Main Street in DC.
Mayor Bowser, who endorsed Mike Bloomberg.
Yeah, but no, Bowser, who literally is a very horrendous mayor, and actually, like specifically when it comes to using public art, has like a history of using like murals to begin like the gentrification process in areas, right? So everyone's very worried, but almost immediately they wrote over it. Activists wrote over it, defund the Black Lives Matter equals defund the police. So I think that what's exciting about this moment is that like the people in the street are driving it, and that people in political power aren't able to sort of like subvert this movement with slogans, which has been my biggest fear.
You see how desperate they are to co-opt it, right?
Yeah.
Like all the stuff with the 8 can't wait stuff, and like
that's the bullshit DeRay thing.
That's the DeRay thing.
Yeah,
that's the 8 can't wait, right? That's
even the cops kneeling too. Like they're desperate to try to like contain this. It's like a fire burning.
Oh, we're going to talk about this on Tuesday, but just there's been a lot of reporting showing that all those things like the cops kneeling or the cops doing a dance and all this stuff, and it shouldn't surprise anybody, but it was imported back from things like the occupation of Iraq. There's these really sick, twisted videos of occupying soldiers in Iraq teaching kids the Macarena outside of a tank. So that stuff, I mean, the things like the kneeling and the dances are the direct, like that is the purest manifestation of basically like public psyops that would get re-imported from the empire back into, policing people here. I agree with everything you're saying, David. I thought what happened in DC was beautiful, the way they did not allow her bullshit move to happen. I also definitely, though, I think this is always the dynamic we're dealing with of like the conversation can get somewhere where most people are at belief-wise is another place. And then what actually has institutional power is a whole other question. So I want to watch and really hope that, and I know people will be because people are really on it, like exactly what people are talking about in Minneapolis. Because if it could turn into like the police department, essentially the same thing, but it's not called that. And it's broken up into a couple constituent, like zones, or it could mean a lot of privatization, which we need to fight and need to be really clear
I hear
about.
you, and I think we should take that threat seriously. But I think we also pay attention to social movements that are happening right now, and the fact that the people are in the streets and making these changes happen from the politicians means that like we're in a very strong position to fight back against any kind of privatization efforts. And I mean that means that we have to keep on the streets and keep working. But I don't know, like I think that from what we've seen, like we're in a strong position that like we should watch out for schemes to kind of like co-opt and derail the movement, to use it to go in a kind of neoliberal way. But I don't think that like that is going to be the consequence, for example, of us winning and getting our demands met, right? Like I don't think that us like dismantling the police means that that's necessarily going to become like a privatized hellscape, right? That's a possibility, but it's more likely if we maintain this momentum that we get what we're demanding.
Man, I often think about New York in these instances because that's just my own experience. And I wonder, well, I know for a fact, because in New York, the NYPD is so basically intertwined with the ethnic white communities of New York that I wonder how that would play in somewhere like New York. I don't know the culture and the climate of Minneapolis enough to say one way or another. But I know in New York, like these traditional neighborhoods. Well, you think about something like Greenpoint, which used to be a bunch of Polish people, or something like Howard Beach, which is, a bunch of Italian people, or, Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. Like, I wonder how those folks might react to some idea of disbanding the NYPD and forming something new in its stead, right? Something different. Because, Jade actually shared with me a link that was just documenting that old protest that the NYPD had against Mayor Dinkins back in 1992. And those folks were angry.
And that was just over, Dinkins proposed community boards and the police.
That were independent.
Independent community boards, the oversight police, and the police rioted and Giuliani got elected mayor. Mm-hmm. That's like literally how that came out. I'm not saying at all to be disheartened or stop the pressure, or that what they're saying in Minneapolis isn't amazing. I just can definitely, but at the same time, just, of course, like always have to be real. Like, I don't know the range. I think what we always see in these movements is it's just like, Occupy was a great example of, like, there were people at Occupy who wanted to dismantle the system entirely. There were people at Occupy who basically just wanted like a little bit of basic decency and fairness they did not have. And I think, and that tension, because ultimately I think that like having a really clear program is ultimately really important. And then at the same time, what's most important is what people decide to do and the risks they take to do it. And that's what's happening right now. And that's why it is more important than any think piece or any theory or anything like that. And that's why even as we have to keep our ability to like do analysis, like you just have to go, right? Like that's really the bottom line. But at the same time, when it starts getting into, and I just have to say, maybe the speed at which that is happening in Minneapolis and just seeing other examples of how that stuff can very easily filter in ways that either, like in the best case, just sound way more radical than they are. Like they're good, but they're not going to actually mean something as substantive.
Mike, it happened in Camden, New Jersey in 2013, right. And it's gone great. Yeah. Crime's gone down. Like they reimagined the police department and it's worked. Like this stuff has worked in other places.
Oh no, it's no doubt it will work. But I mean, what did they do? Like, did they disband? What did they do in Camden? Talk more about that.
Well, essentially, they just reassign these cats, right?
That's it, right? I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I'm more concerned about that.
You're not doing this anymore,
right? And I'm more concerned about that than what they're calling it. You know what I mean? Like Nike is the perfect, like Nike's hysterical. They put out like the great statement about how they're in solidarity. And then people in Portland had to be like, why are you hiring a private security firm to guard Nike that's connected to the Proud Boys?
That's been a whole thing that's been crazy watching these brands.
Like, well, we all know. I mean, but that's, yeah. But then on the other hand, like, well, like some people who are trying to like, be cynical and not see the incredible importance and potential of these protests are just fixating on the brands. And it's like, of course the brands are going to try to co-opt it. We already know that. Like, but I mean, that doesn't define the risk people are making, not at all.
This is bigger than anything we've seen in our lifetime. Yeah, for sure. I mean, just like, not only just like the scope of people in the streets, but the commitment, the kind of like, I use this in a positive way, like the kind of like militancy of people who are like willing to stand out there and get tear gas and get beat, and they're not just going home at the end of the day. They're continuing to stand up. It's just like, we really are in a new political era right now when it comes to these protests. And the question is like, can they sustain themselves into developing into like a sustained political movement? But this is like a rupture that we haven't seen in our lifetime, way bigger than Occupy ever could have imagined itself to be, I think.
Did you guys see the Bristol statue, Bristol, England, the Colston statue? I don't know if David, you want to pull that up, but
like if you guys want to pull it up, that's amazing.
These protests are insanely global.
Amazing.
Like,
that's incredible too. Yeah,
Berlin is just massive. It looks like the wall just fell. Like, But
It's amazing. Brazil is out, and that's turning into targeting Bolsonaro.
Yeah, bad.
And I mean, you looked at like in Falls Road, that picture of Jerry Adams. You know, they'd have the murals on Falls Road for all of the global liberation struggles, Palestine, anti-apartheid, the new George Floyd memorial there, and Jerry Adams, like basically, essentially it just is a mural of George Floyd and it says Black Lives Matter. I mean, there is that, the militancy and the global, like actual solidarity of it is the most incredible thing. And also, we'll play this in a second. I don't feel great about this, but like, this is pre-corona second wave. And people are going to be even more fucking enraged in the fall and winter.
Well, this is a wild, this is in Bristol, UK, where they ripped down this statue of a pretty infamous slave trader who they built a statue for him because he was a philanthropist. Anyways,
we're all philanthropists down here. Kerploop.
Wait. What was that sound, Matt?
It's like kerploop.
Kerploop.
There's some other angles of it too. I don't know if you can scroll down.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Did you see that yet, Waz?
Yeah, no, that's the first time I'm seeing that, which is like, Dave said they put it up there for his philanthropy. I don't know. It's like putting a Hitler statue up and saying it's for his art, his artistry. Like, this dude was a great artist. We had to do that. It's like, so that would be so tone deaf, right? Like, people would be like, wait, what? Huh? That's what I was just stuck on. But yeah, people taking down these monuments. So we've gone through so much in the past few years. Like, we kind of forgot about the Confederate monument sort of movement where people across the American South were basically like, yo, we need to take down this stuff. These are symbols of hate and oppression for a lot of your citizens in places like Alabama, Mississippi, and Arkansas, and, all over the South. And that battle has sort of receded and faded into the background, which I think has a lot to do with just that seemed so important and like urgent before our current president took office. And so those stories were always leading the news and you could get people riled up about that. But it's like, now it's like, that's hard to get somebody riled up for after the past 3.5 years. Like,
what I like about this, like all of these things have been like, there's Rhodes Must Fall movement in South Africa and all, like, I think it's just like it matters, but when it's connected with like this, we're doing this as part of something that's happening now. Like, we're going to get rid of this for the same reason that we're going to get rid of these police departments now. Like it makes like the stakes of it,
the immediacy of it,
so amped up. Yeah, the immediacy.
I really, when this first started happening, I was like, this is another big moment, and was just showing how horrific our system is in this country. But I'll be honest, like, last week even, I was like, okay, well, this is going to last for a few days, right?
Right.
I just can't think that this is going to go away easily. And I think like even, and, to go back to Minneapolis, right? It's like the first demand was, prosecute the police officers involved. And now like the movement has actually, grown into something greater. Like, I think this is going to be a really hard thing for the state to put a bottle in. And the fact that it's spreading across the globe, and that these, not only are there like sister, like solidarity protests, like these are actual protests, like against their systems there too. Right. It's like, that's like something that I think is just really amazing that we're seeing. I just don't see that this is going to be easy to go away. I was talking to Matt the other day. It's been pretty amazing to watch the police, the first reaction that they had. It was amazing to see just like the brutality that they showed. obviously we don't, that's not a surprise. The police are brutal, right? But just like how unstrategic it was that they just continue to do it in broad daylight, just like horrendous attacks on the public, which only, furthered the commitment of all these people say we need to defund the police departments. I don't think that they're going to be able to put, bow on that, right? Because it's been made very clear to a lot of people who haven't experienced firsthand the brutality of the police, how brutal that system is.
Yep.
Yeah, somebody threw a water bottle in Fargo at the protest, and the cops got into like red coat formation like it was a fucking American Revolution. And walked out. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, but they're policing ideology, it's not,
Well, what it's not, Mike? It's not nonviolent.
It's definitely not nonviolent.
I'll tell you that's what it's not.
That's the truth.
Nobody ever lectures the cops about, well, why don't you go with the nonviolent approach?
Yeah, why don't you de-escalate? That photo, why don't you, our perception of you would be so much improved if you could stay calm and not attack people and not be so. My message to the police is to stop being so divisive.
Yeah, I want to take property damage seriously, but you can't use violence to try to solve the problem.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Look, order's great. I don't want bottles left in the park either, but you can't beat up people for doing it. That just makes you look bad. I think, in New York, as of today, it's a major. I think honestly, the last couple of days, they don't care how they look. This has just been raw. We are going to physically terrify you and physically punish you for doing this. And maybe it makes us look bad. We want to look bad that way, right? Because we just want to intimidate you. So staying through that and having that, at least beating the curfew in New York, it's not like we're not in Minneapolis territory, but that's huge. Mm-hmm. And the way de Blasio was defending police abuse, even after they doxed his daughter, this fucking pussy. What a cuck. That he pulls back the curfew in a way, of course, that's just like total bullshit. Like, after a couple of nights of nonviolent after a couple of nights of watching the police absolutely beat the shit out of people exercising their First Amendment rights, now it doesn't look that bad. And I'm going to talk a little bit about redistributing budgets too. That's huge. I do want to say too that in New York City right now, habeas corpus has been suspended. Like literally, you can be held indefinitely at this moment. That is like, I hope that people can see. Yeah. Because some of the response to this is showing you, like, obviously from the top level, what Trump and Barr want to do anyways, and the way DC has been militarized, but also the way that, in the last couple of decades, this infrastructure has been built that could be deployed on anybody. Mm-hmm. And it's wild, honestly, how little it takes.
And who else could it be deployed on but us, really?
Yeah. Honestly,
it's here.
It's here.
Why have we been buying those tanks? It's not for fucking Al-Qaeda coming to America.
Right. They're finally using it on us in a systemic way. But again, I don't think that image, like, it backfires, man, because people look at that and be like, that's a bit much. And it becomes a slippery slope to when, like, all right, but how soon until they just make this the permanent normal? When you go to Costco and there's a tank there because nobody wants to see you get out of line. It's crazy to me.
But that's the thing. And I think, again, that's like in terms of taking it all in, that's like the balance of where we're at. Mm. There is like, just in the big picture sense, it's a relief that there are enough Americans that frankly aren't docile enough to finally get out over racism, over police murders. And also, I'm going to just say in that sense, over everything. Like, we're in a pandemic, Great Depression, and all this is being used is just for another round of looting for the most wealthy people and companies in the country. And people were just taking it, Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, and actually, did you guys catch The Intercept? The Intercept did a report about an Army war game scenario that was built on something called, it was like the Zoomer Revolution. And the game that the Pentagon did was that throughout the 2020s, more and more people born after 1996, they're looking at it very strictly generationally. I would suspect it would be more people are fed up with the system. Their lives are defined by the Great Recession, and they perceive things as corrupt. All is true. And so the game predicts mass street, like ongoing demonstrations like this, like not stopping. And then coordinated with basically like sophisticated, like Robin Hood hacking, like awesome shit.
Oh, please.
Like, hacking the banks, and then redistributing wealth through Bitcoin, which I have to say in this Pentagon scenario was the first. Funny.
Damn.
Literally, this is the first time. It took a Pentagon scenario though for the first time for me to ever be like, that's the first thing I ever read that made me cool about Bitcoin. Yeah. But I guess I think that the elite in this country have been, and globally have actually been expecting stuff like this more so than we have in a way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think this is deep in their consciousness.
I mean, wasn't this something that this is probably a couple of years ago, but there's that, it might've been the Intercept. I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was a story about like the super rich in America have basically been developing their bug out plans. Right, they've been buying like remote islands and stuff, and setting up opportunities that like if things develop very quickly in this country, they could get out like immediately. Like, yeah, I think that the super rich do understand that the way that they've been living is not sustainable for having a large scale society.
Hey, that's Andrew Yang's entire campaign. That's his whole premise. It's like, we can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't gonna work long term. They're gonna start pulling us out of our cushy ass cribs and killing us on the street soon. We gotta like throw these people a bone eventually. That's his whole campaign message. Like, that's what that universal basic income shit is about. It's like, look, we're getting away with stone cold murder. And eventually there's going to be a backlash. Let's get ahead of it. That's what his whole shtick was, man. 100% what you just talked about.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Was there some kind of, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of Silicon Valley hucksters, Elon Musk, it'd be nice to, like, every time you want to just get big checks from rich people, you can just say Mars Colony. And some of them are probably going to, like, get on his beeper. Like, Elon, can I reserve my space over there?
Was there some type of fake? Because I saw the LAPD tweeted out a demonstration. Thomas, did you see that?
No, I did not.
There's some type of AstroTurf demonstrations in LA. Maybe you guys could look it up. Is the curfew still in place in LA?
No,
right?
The curfew has been lifted since Thursday.
Oh, they got rid of it since Thursday.
They got rid of it Thursday. Like they just basically was like, all right, what are we doing?
This isn't working.
This is ridiculous. And
Joshua, yeah.
Also, the thing about the curfew is that like shit like Ralph's, this grocery store, was forced to close at 9 p.m. And so I'm sure the money started coming down on them too, right? Like, it's not as if like I was allowed to go to a restaurant or go to this, or because restaurants have been open since last week.
You've been going to restaurants already?
No, they're open.
I was about to say, Jesus Christ, am I the only one still in quarantine when I'm not protesting?
No, no, but they're open. They're doing limited capacity. Basically I think 40% capacity, outdoor patios, all of that stuff. So if these business establishments, restaurants, liquor stores, all of this stuff, it's just like, wait a second, man. Like, we need these people to come buy stuff. What are you doing? They rescinded it. And so since Thursday night, it's been no curfew. I think Wednesday
cops beating the shit out of our delivery people.
Yeah, that was horrible.
Not cool, dude.
So disgusting and evil, man. So but I think like that might actually be though the next wave of AstroTurf or like PSYOP. And I'm using PSYOP like very specifically, like all that dancing Neil stuff, that is PSYOP. And you can see it with those footage from places like Iraq and Afghanistan. So is the next like, yeah, we're all going to march together. You know? It's like everybody can march together as human beings. Everybody's a human being. Every human being is reachable. No human being is perfect. That I will say till I'm blue in the face. But if you have that function right now, then you can't march.
Mm-hmm.
That's the distinction. But I think you'll see more of that. I think that'll be the next wave. And that's going to be how, because on the political level, Donald Trump is going to fucking lean the hell into this. They want to get rid of it so that they can maraud. It's going to be, I mean, what we already knew. It's going to be pure racist fear-mongering. And then, you know, the Biden campaign is going to look like a Nike commercial for Black Lives Matter with like, you know, shoot him in the calf.
Yeah, exactly.
Shoot him in the calf, Jack.
Biden of all people being the face of this, of the parties, like in this specific moment, like with his ridiculous history of fake ass tough on crime shit. It's just amazing, man. Like, and the problem always with Biden is like the bald face hypocrisy of the party, basically encapsulated in human form is Joe Biden. It's crime bill guy. It's sexual harassment guy. It's you know, down with Wall Street and the banks guy. Like he is all of it. The hypocrisy of the party embodied in one freaking person.
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth. And also, again, he's also just, you know, and it'll be that same fight because, you know, none of the
people that got killed by police on the nomination stage where she's just like, yeah, hooray! It's just like, no, Hillary.
I like your Hillary impression. Why?
It's just like just the optics. Or like, did you see that? I text that to the Woke Bros group chat when she tweeted that freaking. It was the picture of when they had the rainbow lights on the White House, and that night, and it was next to it was the night that Trump went to the bunker and the White House went dark with just the word vote. Just like
because under my presidency, we will redesign the police force to have rainbow colored robots that will automatically kill people that make underneath 70 grand a year who are in the wrong neighborhood. Remember when Axel Foley asked at the warehouse how a black man got a match? Why did he? Yeah, think of that. Except with AI technology that in a non-discriminatory way would kill him. Not just because he's black, but because he's wearing a denim jacket. And a rainbow flag. Don't forget to vote.
Speaking of that voice, Mitt Romney is marching, I guess. Which is
Jesus!
Oh my god,
dude! I saw that. I don't usually whatever. I don't mix it up with her at all. But Ida B. Wells on Twitter, who wrote the very heavily critiqued. You can watch Adolph Reed and I on the 1619 Project. She was tweeting the other day about like how great a man George Romney was. And I will say, like, yes, George Romney as a car company CEO was definitely part of the business class that was absolutely on the right side of civil rights. But it's a lot to, go in the archives for him if, Bernie getting arrested as a college student in Chicago. It's like, yeah, fuck that. Yeah. Fuck him. He was a great guy. This Republican car company CEO. Oh my God.
You want a super chat?
Yeah, let's do some super chats. I'm trying to think of all of the. Do you guys remember Caveman Lawyer on SNL?
Yeah, Phil Hartman.
Yeah, Phil Hartman from like 25 years ago or something. You guys know that? Mm-hmm. That's like my favorite. What did you say?
I'm not familiar. I'm about to YouTube it though.
It's the best. It's like he just goes, he's like literally a caveman. It's like It's like, remember those movies in like the late 80s and early 90s that were like, you know, like Pauly Shore movies, like, dude, we found a guy from
Encino Man.
Yeah, like Encino Man, dude, like, and now he's gonna go to the mall with us. And so it's just kind of that, except he was actually like, he was a caveman who was de-thawed from ice, and then he was just like an incredible, like, high-powered lawyer, but his whole shtick was always like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I don't understand your complex ways. Like, he goes, I look at your TV and flashing lights and go, whoa, I'm so confused. Is a demon yelling at me? And then it would always end with like, I don't understand that much, but I do understand that my client is not liable for dumping pesticides into the drinking well. Like, he was always just, and all I could think about in my fucking insomnia state last night while I was watching these old Phil Hartman bits was just like, I would love to see Caveman Lawyer's BLM solidarity statement. That's like all we're seeing. That's just the worst people in corporations who practice racism, who practice brutality in every way, shape, and form.
I fired up Call of Duty the Warzone, and there was a Black Lives Matter like screen on the loading screen. Like, it's everywhere. It's crazy.
That's crazy. I mean, again, like when you see Roger Goodell, like, bro, we did this already with you. Like, we did this 4 years ago with you, and you completely dismiss you and your cronies, the people who hire you, who pay you $40-50 million a year to do your job, dismissed it outright, like just straight up. And now I'm watching you do a selfie video where you're talking about, no, the movement is great. We support it. It's like, wow, this is incredible, man.
Isn't that one's really, that one though is crazy because that one is really one-to-one. Like, he actually has one material thing he can do. Right? Like, he can say like, and therefore I'm going to stop destroying Colin Kaepernick's career. Like, he actually has one that he could just say. It's unbelievable. All right, take some super chats.
We're still on football here. From Pete, I think people would describe Drew Brees as, quote, all-American. Where did that phrase come from? What does it mean? And do you think it's still a relevant description?
Was.
I mean, it's all-American is just, you know, Happy Days. The characters in Happy Days. It's white. It's suburban. It's clean cut. It's not poor. That's all American. You're white. You're happy. You're from the suburbs. You're not poor. And so therefore you're all American. Like, anybody who doesn't fit in any of those descriptors that I just mentioned might as well not be considered American. Okay. And that's what the term all American has always meant. You know, like, it's a white person, a suburban person who's not poor, who's happy all the time, doesn't cause any trouble, doesn't challenge any of the prevailing norms of the country. You know, Drew Brees, like, he doesn't challenge you in any way, shape, or form, dude. Like, nothing.
And he's a coward. I gotta say, like, I have like people like Drew Brees who spend their whole life, you know, acting like they're being brave by speaking the truth to defend like the most horrific abuses of the people in general are just complete cowards to me. He's something else, I gotta say.
I don't know if we'll find it, maybe if it's easy, but I think I forgot about this, but I'm reminded on the Call of Duty thing, Matt, that, you know, some fucking white gamer twerp guy put out like I will never play, you know, because I cannot play a game by a company that endorses my murder.
Just so
it's so incredible. Like, the level of the fear levels are a lot.
Gamers, I mean, we all know.
Drew Brees is like the white family in that old Dave Chappelle sketch, whose name I won't mention. That was what made the sketch so funny.
And the thing is, and another thing, and I think it was Martellus Bennett who brought it up. I forget. So many football players have stepped up to the plate and rightfully just dragged Drew Brees. But they was like, yo, the reason why he's getting killed is that Drew Brees is a guy who's basically been around black people for most of his life, all of his adult life. He's worked side by side closely with black people his entire adult life. I don't know what his high school was like, but for sure in college and in the pros, it's been all black, not all black people, but a lot of black people he's living amongst, working, all of this stuff, spending so much time with, getting to know people, hopefully getting to know their stories and their backgrounds and all of that. And even that fool, he can't get it right. He can't get it right because what he sees is so seductive about status and money and acceptance of the dominant white class. He's just like, yeah, fuck their humanity. I got a brand to maintain, man. I'm still selling freaking pyramid schemes to the people. Like, I don't got time for Black Lives Matter.
Whoa, wait, what pyramid scheme is he selling? Is he like doing? Does he do like reverse
one
mortgage
of them, like
pitches?
Advocare? He's doing one of them. He's doing a pyramid scheme. I know he's connected to one.
All right,
Yeah, Mike, that's Drew Brees.
He's trash, man.
That's Drew Brees, bro. Like, he's even in on the pyramid scheme.
If I condemn police brutality, I wouldn't be able to sell scared old seniors gold.
Advocare. Advocare endorsed by quarterback Drew Brees to pay $150 million to settle pyramid scheme lawsuits.
$150 million.
You can't make it up, Mike.
It's a pyramid scheme that got busted. Like,
how bad do you have to be to become a busted pyramid scheme in modern America? I don't even want to do the whole cliches about America itself being a pyramid scheme to some extent, but whatever. I just did. All right, go ahead, Matt.
Another question. Let's see here. What's the role of Marx leftism in geography, in your opinion?
Read David Harvey. His books on the city has a lot actually to do with how we design our spaces. That's actually another thing Wosny and I have been talking about, that you can't, even this whole like bougie life in elite blue cities of primarily white, but all, kind of wealthy liberal arts people living a certain kind of life, is completely inseparable from the types of systemically violent policing we're talking about. That's how people are pushed in certain ways. That's how neighborhoods are cleared out. That's how capital is able to work. I mean, you could see a partnership essentially between, real estate and the paramilitary force of the police a lot. And also in a positive direction. I mean, not to romanticize it, but just like, if you walk around like a city like Paris, even for a couple of days from an American privatized standpoint, and you walk, and Paris has plenty of problems, but just one specific example, you just keep walking by these parks that are like the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life. And you're just like, and your mindset is like, wait, is there like a password to get in there? Is that owned by a neighborhood association? If we walk in, is there going to be a problem? It's a park. So, there's a lot.
I'd even just add, just to add to that, there's a real dynamic that you see in American cities versus other places in the world, which is like the lack of like a big plaza or like a big square in the middle of a town. Think about New York, for example, or Brooklyn. So many of the movements have been outside of Barclays Center.
Yeah.
Right. Which is like a horrible, antisocial space. Right. It's because like these cities were very much designed to prevent there being these kind of mass areas that people could go and gather.
I think that's why Grand Army actually feels really special.
And it's unique for sure.
And is unique. Yeah. You're right.
DC is the opposite. Like DC is like has similar dynamics too, where DC like has a little bit more of like a European street design with like the large streets. So you can have those big dynamic gatherings where you see thousands of people in a street. Marxist geography is pretty cool. It's not something I've delved into like too much other than, top line stuff like that.
Another one? Yeah, let's see here if we got another question. A lot of love y'all keep up the good work type comments. Thanks
Well,
for
those are the best. We love you back.
Now, this is an interesting question from 2 question marks. How do we not let the Al Sharpton of the worlds and party establishment co-opt this?
Oh man, I think Al Sharpton is kind of he's a rap. I think he's a dub. Like everybody kind of knows that like skinny Al Sharpton is he's done, right?
Past
I
it,
think
yeah.
what you
You know, like
I think-
vegan Al Sharpton was?
vegan Al Sharpton ain't like, pimp Al Sharpton, drug heroin dealer Al Sharpton, maybe
Question mark, allegedly. Who knows?
allegedly, right? FBI informant Al Sharpton, sure.
Yo, the best part, can I just say, of what the information that came out about him potentially having mafia relationships and also talking to NYPD and the FBI was one of the things he kind of said was like, yeah, like, of course I was talking with members of like different mafia crew, essentially because like they were getting to know people in like neighborhoods they were operating in, right? And so it's just, and of course that wasn't what he was being accused of doing, but just the idea that some guy from like the Lucchese family is just like, you know, before we sell heroin uptown, we should talk with that Mooley minister out of respect, just to get a sense of what the community feels. Like the mafia was actually like the precursors of like fucking gentrificate, like just sort of like, you know what, we want to go in and listen.
Well, so I think Al Sharpton is not somebody you need to be worried about. I think what's more likely is somebody like, somebody like DeRay, quite frankly, right? Like who's basically an arm of the neoliberal wing of the party. He's going to be more readily able to co-opt a lot of this stuff because one, he's black, which matters. You know what I'm saying? Like they could be like, look, man, we got a black guy doing it and saying it. And, you know, he speaks the language of the elites, right? Like he puts them at ease. This isn't a freaking, I don't know, like he's not a gruff sort of a voice or like he's palatable. And I don't want to call him a safe Negro or nothing like that, but he's down with them. Like he's clearly got those people's ears. They trust him to go out and spread the versions of programs they would like to see enacted. And I think you're more likely to see something from a DeRay, man, than an Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton is cooked.
What do you think? What do you guys, David, Matt, what do you guys think on this?
I mean, I think that, you know, there is a threat of the movement getting co-opted. It's something we have to very much, you know, watch out for. I think the encouraging thing that we've seen has just been since this has been such a face-to-face movement for a lot of people, the ability of people, you know, just sitting out in the media world or, you know, on the internet to be able to just like capture the energy for themselves is a little bit limited, right? Because if you're just in the streets with the same people regularly, right, you build those connections directly and you don't need like a mediator or like someone coming down as like a spokesperson, but, you know, someone we have to watch out for. I think the DC was a great example of it. I was so worried when I saw, you know, what Bowser was doing, trying to like, you know, cut the teeth off the movement, but people immediately reacted against it and didn't allow that message to be co-opted by, you know, the city government. So I think, you know, there's been encouraging signs basically organically that we're ready to repel these kind of people who I think are going to try to co-opt the movement. But, you know, I mean, like, you know, we have to be prepared for it because there definitely are a lot of people, let alone, you know, folks like DeRay, but, you know, corporate America is already, you know, trying to jump on everything. Amazon put up a big Black Lives Matter banner on their webpage, you know, after they, you know, fired a worker for trying to stand up for people who were,
and then tried to racially attack him.
Exactly.
And they fired Chris Smalls because they're going to go after any kind of labor organizing, period. And then the plan of attack to undermine him was racism. Mm-hmm. I mean, among other things. So, yeah, absolutely. Matt?
I think you guys covered that question fairly well.
I would just say, like, I want to just be really interested in the idea of, like, the difference between spokespeople and leadership. Because, like, we actually do need to cultivate leadership, and we do need to cultivate actual, like,
clear demands and clear, those things are very important.
Feed, Matt. I think
the feed dropped.
We lost the feed.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. But we're back
sorry.
though.
We're back.
It's shaky. It's been shaky, but yeah, it finally.
All right, if we're back, are we back?
We good. I think.
All right, yeah, but I would just say
okay.
Yeah, so I would just say I think really looking at from that distinction at nonprofits, how the nonprofit sector uses these things, obviously the Democratic Party, and really too the difference between I think there's real different and important disagreements inside politics and inside radicalism, and that's great and very productive. But I think you'll definitely notice, especially with movements like this, you could see it becomes clear with certain people, certain websites, certain organizations. Again, the aesthetic, the iconography looks radical and uncompromising, but the agenda is actually nothing. Mm-hmm. So I would think on those lines, but not in terms of saying there isn't going to be leaders, because there has to be people who have those roles. That's part of the dynamic. But yeah,
kind of two questions. If we want to do the two remaining that we haven't really touched, kind of combine them. Jillian Williams, how do you guys not feel hopeless, especially during times like this? Feels like substantial change to the system will never come. Thank you guys. Another one, is nihilism, pessimism hurting the left electorally? And I would just say, I think these moments seem more momentous than any that I can remember since I've been politically conscious as far as big things happening. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I said that at the top of the show. I think just the broad nature of the response, and I mean across classes, across races, across immigrant class, the broad nature of this response, people in rural areas responding to this, I think is definitely very hopeful. What you saw in the 1960s was definitely mostly Black people. And, when it wasn't that, it was mostly in the big cities, Baltimore and Detroit and the like. This spreading across all kinds of places in America, to me, is very hopeful because it's unlike anything we've seen in the past.
Yeah. I've been amazed. I mean, I'm not happy about this situation that we're in. It's bad, right? And I don't think that, we should sugarcoat it. But at the same time, I haven't felt more hopeful for the future than recently. I felt more hopeful for the future than I have in a long time, because the fact that not only are people seeing that there's so much wrong in this country, but they're actually willing to go out and do something about it. And I think that's been one of the biggest shifts, is that, we've had, for so many people, they don't think about politics as an action that you can take and that you can be a part of a mass or be a part of a group like this, right? Politics is such an individual thing. It's well, I believe this personally, right? That's great. It's important to cultivate your own beliefs, but literally going out into the street with thousands of other people is a very different kind of political activity. And I think something that's been missing for a long time on this kind of mass scale that I think is necessary to get our demands. So, look, there's a lot to be devastated about, and we continue to hear more horrible news. One, just about the devastation that the police brutality has, caused recently. But the more that people start to learn about the history of this country and what's been going on, that's a very difficult thing, for a lot of people to realize and go through. But it's happening. And I think that, I've been really inspired by, Cornel West talking about these things. He's thank God that people are out. That people aren't so desensitized that they could see somebody get murdered in public and would just stay home, right? I mean, it's devastating, the circumstances that had to bring people out, but the fact that they're out is really heartening.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I also just think I think if you're spending a lot of time on the internet and in social media, just consuming and seeing how absolutely dire things are, that is where I would really constructively recommend. I mean, if you feel up for it, go to a protest, feel that energy. If you don't, then really tap out of it for a minute. Honestly, watch some sports.
It's gonna be a
read
long
book,
fight.
take a walk, do something else to remind you of something else. But I also just kind of feel like, I'm incredibly pessimistic. I'm not going to lie. I think there are a huge amount of barriers, and I got a lot of, I get that, but it's also like, it is what it is. What else are you going to do? It's what's in front of us. And, when you take some action, potential opens.
Two more that are two most recent are kind of thematically similar. Blake Livingston says, my local DSA is white AF. Are there better orgs with more diverse membership or I should get involved in, or should I make efforts to diversify my DSA? And then the Raleigh Tog says, is it futile to protest in rich, majority white suburban cities? How do we get the most sheltered people in the streets and engaged in meaningful ways? Does the left need them with so many now protesting?
I think that you should trust your gut about when people ask about like their groups. It's hard for me to say because you're in the group and I'm not. But
if you need to split off, going there and meeting the people there, that will be a good first step to split it off and start in another organization if the local one isn't going to do it for you, I think.
That's totally true. I also saw, again, I'll cite Adolph Reed one more time in response to, like he just said, like, if there's somebody at this meeting that you think should be here, bring them. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some truth to that, but in general, that's Brianna Last has a really good piece in the Bellows about it's a problem. DSA, I think something like 2/3 of people make like over 100K a year. That's a real, it's very white, it's very upper class. So, but the way you think you should engage it, that questions like that are just so tough.
I'd say if you were thinking about
I can't tell human beings what to do in situations, you know what I mean?
In everyday moments, it might not be super important, but I would say like if you're going to a protest in some city, like, I don't know, wherever, it'd be good to have a bunch of DSA people to go with, right? If none of your friends want to go. So like just from purely networking, like that's what you got to think about these things is who are you going to meet there? And I think there's a problem with the makeup of the base, but you have to find out how bad it is, I guess.
We're going to interview Brianna soon. What do you think, Waz?
Man, I don't know. I always tell you guys, man, I understand the instinct to be like, oh, this is so white, like I get that instinct, but I don't think that's something that should be avoided. I think you should try to level with people, meet them where they live. Like, what are you supposed to do about a community that's just not very diverse? But you still want to spread these ideas and this way of thinking. You got to do what you got to do, as far as I'm concerned, right? Like, growing this thing is what's most important to me. It's not like you could just like bust some Latin or black people in, right? Like, this is not one of those situations like a Trump rally where they always got the token, Hispanic person or black person directly behind them, so that people watching can't say, oh, that's an all-white. It's like, we're not doing that. If we're trying to build a true coalition of people who really believe in and support the values and the ideas that DSA espouses, then you got to do what you got to do, man. I tend to not get too worried, especially in an organization like that. I think a lot of times you might be somewhere like at your job, and if you can help there being more black people hired, you should be doing that, right? Yeah. But like, this is not that. This is not like the same sort of situation. You're dealing with like where people live. Mm-hmm. What are you gonna do about that?
I also think like DSA in general, like across the board, like I don't know, like I've talked with Dustin Guastella, who does incredible work, with like Philly DSA, but like I think it's like some of what DSA 2 is just as simple as like, because it does draw such a specific type, racially, geographically, and economically. There's like a whole bunch of other, I don't know, it's not for me to say, but I think in terms of like bringing people that you think that should be there, and then also starting to talk to, this actually goes back to all the other conversations that with 2 departments in Oklahoma being the most violent. And Kansas City kills twice the national average. So I think even this frame, like, it's a crisis it's a deep crisis in New York. It's a crisis of racism and brutality in all of the blue cities that we talk about. But this really is a nationwide issue that's affecting Black and brown and poor life across the country. So I also think, the circumstances are there for people to respond. And that's terrible, because that is a reflection of how bad things are. But there's a lot of people out that don't need to be convinced to be out because they're dealing with it,
I would just, the only thing I would add specifically to the DSA, I think what y'all said was right. I just say, like, win, like you need to show people that being involved in politics or being a member of this organization is beneficial to them and to their life, and can better their communities and strengthen their communities. And if you're not showing that, then people aren't going to join your organization, right? And if you spend a lot of time, by the way, groveling about things too, instead of being action oriented, then you're going to have the same fate forever. So I think that there's a lot of tangible things that organizations can do. I know that a lot of groups are very conscious of that and are trying to shift that dynamic. But I think the fundamental question is, like, you need to show people that politics is a way that they Burtonshaw said this on the show, which I thought was really great. He says, we need to convince people that politics is a way that they can better their life. And that's what you need to do. And then you'll start to have communities that represent more of the population around you when you start showing them that you can, we can deliver the goods to folks, right? That's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, Blake adds in that he lives in a diverse area. The membership's just not diverse, and I mean that's also true of New York DSAs. I mean that's
exactly. That's the problem. You have to show that you can win. That this is a place where you can build political power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are there any others?
We got one final one here, or one most recent one here. If Biden wins, will the left go back to sleep since it's one of our guys back in the White House, and will it be followed by a worse Trump?
You know what? I really am tired. Like, I get where that phrase asleep came from, but I think it's becoming, like, I'm starting to see this used in the most non-materialistic, idealistic way imaginable. Like, the reason, like, first of all, if you're talking about the left, the people that were, people contradict themselves all the time, because a lot of the people that are quote unquote not asleep anymore are liberals who got freaked out about Trump, and that is not left. So let's make a clear distinction here.
Those are Biden voters.
Those are Biden voters. So, and then the second bigger overriding part is a critical mass of the country being asleep is predicated, frankly, that there are enough people, primarily upper middle class and white, who have an insulated enough life that they can be quote unquote asleep. So if you take away Trump, there are probably going to be some people that chill out for a minute. There's going to be some, affluent Democrats of all backgrounds who chill out a little bit. But the overarching thing that is making people not asleep are material conditions. We are in a fucking depression. We are confronting the daily realities and legacies of hyper violent, brutal, racist, classist policing. We're dealing with a pandemic. We're dealing with is adding tens of millions of people that don't have health insurance. So no, nobody's going to go back asleep. Now, what could happen in Biden's 4 years? I'm very pessimistic, and he totally could lose to a Republican. At the same time, I have no doubt that preserving some opening areas and civil liberties will be more effective under Biden than under Trump. That's a no-brainer. But no, I material conditions control whether or not people are quote unquote asleep or not. And that is not, and the people that are just interested in politics because Trump tweets shit are not what we're talking about anyways. So I think that's a misplaced analysis.
I would just add
nothing to add.
I just say really quickly that, if you're afraid that Biden is going to put people back asleep, then they haven't woken up in the first place, right? Like, if Biden is going to kill the movement, then the movement wasn't strong enough, and we have to do better. It's not easy to say, but it's like we just have to be strong enough to be able to deal with these scenarios. Exactly. I understand the fear that, for example, like people are going to stop caring about ICE and the detention centers if, Joe Biden comes in. But if they can be placated that easily, then they didn't understand the systematic nature of those institutions in the first place. So that's more work to be done.
100%. And also, let's also, like, if Biden does some things that are like in areas like that are slightly in the right direction and reduce human suffering, that's a good thing. And it also is not going to get us out of, we know that Joe Biden is not going to do anything to get us out of the overall systems crisis we're in. We know that. So, yeah, I don't like the way people who use that argument are very, like, with one breath, there's the left and there's all these bullshit, squishy liberals, which is true. But then all of a sudden, when it comes to that, Trump is making sure we're not sleeping. And then if Trump is making sure we're not sleeping, then all of a sudden the squishy liberals you're hitting for all their silliness all of a sudden are leftists. Mm-hmm. People who are talking about the big picture are not fucking gonna be like, I can't wait till Joe Biden does a fucking forum.
Man, you know what's so crazy, Michael, is that I think the left was actually awakened by Barry.
Yes.
Like liberals love Barry and they still love Barry to this day. In fact, all they want to do is go back to Barry, where the worst thing we was doing were droning people into smithereens in Yemen, right? That's what liberals definitely want to go back to. I think the campaign of Bernie Sanders back in 2016 was literally a left awakening. Like that, it's literally a response to neoliberal style politics. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a false notion just in general.
Yeah. I think it's tired. I agree. We got any more?
Let's see. I think we got. Oh, here's one I missed. Should we worry about these spooks posing as protesters trying to defang this revolt? How do we deal with the Paris Howards and Zach Schaefers? I assume that's about undercover cops, agents provocateurs.
I don't know the names that they're talking about, but you know what? Police and intelligence infiltration. COINTELPRO is not a thing just of the past, so it's a big danger. Yeah. And certainly you should, look at things like Signal and, stuff like that. On a practical
it's
level.
weird. Like, I think camera phones are making that stuff kind of a liability also to do that sort of stuff. Like the smashing the windows of the Ace Hardware. I think that was an operation of some sort. And I think it did not go well. And that, like, they're going... I don't know. Film shit. If you see stuff acting weird, you think it might be a cop. Although, even saying that, like, that's kind of dangerous too. Don't film a protester and get them arrested, right? So it's like,
right.
Well, I think I
don't think there's any way to combat that.
Yeah, I don't know. We just have to show out numbers.
That's it. This idea of an insurgency, guys, agitators, guys that are coming in specifically to make the outside world view the movement in a specific lens. I don't know how do you stop guys who are cops from breaking an Ace Hardware store window? Like how? From randomly doing it. You yourself can be like, yo, I'm not gonna do that. If some guy's like, let's fuck that place up, and be like, all right, I'm probably gonna chill. You seem a little bit too excited to do this. But I don't know how you stop that. How do you combat that?
I'd also just add too that, like, I think, I don't know the tactic, I think, and I think that you have to be vigilant, but understand that, like, there's two goals of the, of actually infiltration, right? The first is to, do a false flag, make the movement look more violent or whatever. The second is literally to create an environment of distrust and anti-solidarity. So that scares me the most, I have to say, is just how, just like, let's also be careful not to overreact, that we start actually like dismantling our own movements because we're so fearful of, this kind of outside agitator, which, has just like been like one of the main refrains. It's been looters and outside agitators have been predominantly what the media has been talking about.
All 50 states got them.
And check out, and definitely, and that's also the why, like, try to build a healthy culture. Don't do dumb shit. Don't vampire castle. I mean, honestly, this is where some of the things were practically, because there's some stuff you read about on the left. It's just like, they don't even need outside agitators to create a toxic, paranoid, ridiculous, stupid culture. So
there's an old school, I have to find it, just like, it's a collection of like diary pieces just about this small communist party group in like the 50s or 60s, where they all just were convinced that every other member was, CIA, right? And they like, I'll have to find it. It's pretty funny to read because obviously it destroyed the entire little group.
We're dead again, fellas.
Oh, we're dead again. All right. Let's see if
see if we can come back enough to sign off.
Let's see if we can come back and wrap up.
Everyone's doing F's in the chat.
Yeah. We're back.
I think we should be back. Let me just make sure. I think it's protest related. I don't think we're back.
Oh wow!
No, we're back.
Are we? Okay, mine.
It looks like we're back.
That. Okay.
Yeah. So we were just saying, like, this is why also like this is another reason why building a healthy culture on the left is so important, because so much of what the left does when it builds its own fucked up, toxic, hostile, ridiculous environments is the work of destroying solidarity and friendship anyways. But all right, we're gonna wrap up. That was fucking great as always. We thank all of you. We salute everybody watching. We thank all TMBS viewers and patrons. Of course, if you're able, go to patreon.com/TMBS, become a patron. You can find all of Woz's work. I mean, at Big Woz on Twitter, but he does a lot of amazing work, including Hoops Adjacent for The Athletic. Subscribe to that. That's one of my favorite podcasts.
Subscribe to The Athletic. You can read me over there. You can hear me yap on, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts at, as far as Hoops Adjacent. And, of course, check out all our work that we do on the cultural side at Count the Dings, including but not exclusive to the Woke Bros that we do on the Black Opinions Matter feed, and just a host of other stuff. So make sure you're checking us out.
Yeah, it's great. All of it's really, really great. Check it all out. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, David. As always, you can, of course, find David and Matt on Twitter. Check out Literary Hangover on Twitch and Patreon and iTunes. Tuesday, Vivek Chibber is going to be our guest. On the 16th, Noam Chomsky is going to be on. Woo! And we've got Noam is coming. Woo! We've also got a conversation we've got a conversation with Cedric Johnson too on policing beyond the technical fix, which I'm excited about. So a lot more for patrons today. They had When China Rules the World. All right, everybody, stay strong, stay safe.